Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New View podcast. My name is Mac.
And my name is Megan.
Come along with us as we dive into the world of competitive Irish dancing and beyond,
sharing perspectives, developing community, and learning from each other.
We hope you enjoy.
We feel so lucky to be introducing to today's amazing guest, McKenna Furst. She's a world champion, All-Ireland champion, national and regional champion, and it's clear she's one of Irish dance's biggest names. But while McKenna is an incredibly accomplished dancer, we know she has a lot of passion and a great story to share with all of us. So we feel super lucky to have her on today and hear about her journey in dancing. So McKenna, would you want to take us through your journey a bit? Tell us all things you and what this art means to you and what dancing is for you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I started dancing what people sometimes would consider quite late. I was 7 years old. My mom was a dancer and she never really introduced me to it, but I was cleaning out a garage with my Nana and I came across all these tapes and trophies and wigs and I was like, what is this? So she took me inside and put on Lord of the Dance. I kind of just got hooked. I was like, you need to teach me immediately. I was trying to, dance the best I could. And then my mom taught me a little bit at home until she signed me up for a school just down the road. And then it kind of just kickstarted off of there. And, fast forward a couple of years, I was in open and, I wasn't always the most experienced dancer. So had been dancing for only 3 years when I was 10. And I gave up a lot of summers and it was a lot of just spending a lot of time in the studio or at home practicing. And then COVID hit and I went to Doherty Petrie and everything kind of just started to skyrocket. My results started to, I was placing well before then, but I started to really I was like, oh my gosh, I could be really, really good at this. And then I got third at nationals in Phoenix during COVID, and that was probably the biggest shock of like my entire life. And then honestly, the rest is just history.
Kind of gone from there. That's really cool. I think that's interesting well, I mean, it's not that interesting, but you say, I started kind of late. You started at 7. I also started at, I think I was like 6 going on 7 pretty much. So similar time. And it's interesting. Like, I'm curious to see what's going to play out for you because I almost kind of wonder for myself. I ended up having like a very long career, not because I started super duper early, but because I went till I was like 28 years old, right? And I almost kind of wonder like if starting later sometimes does have its advantages because I think, especially with dance, getting into it early is often like a big thing. Like girls start when they're like 3 or 4. And I think there's something to be said for that in that it kind of like gets into your body, as you're just like forming into a human pretty much. But by the time you're 6 or 7, like you're a little bit older. It's not like you've hit puberty or anything like, but you're still young. But I just wonder if there's something to be said for that in terms of like you're a little bit more like mature mentally as well and like if when it's the right person coming into dance a little bit later if you're really able to embrace it and maybe make the most of your classes more than you did when you were like 4. Do you know what I mean? Do you think
Yeah,
that
no,
is
I
maybe
think
true
so
too?
too. Because, like, I know a lot of friends whose parents are teachers and they can't imagine life outside of a studio. But it's like, I've done other sports too. So I'm like, oh, no, like this is something that I want to do. And I gave up soccer when I was like 5, 6 years old. And I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna commit to it. And I think, having the being a little older, you can listen better and, it's not like learning your right from your left through Irish
Yeah,
dancing too.
yeah, totally. I'm curious. So you did soccer as well. Were you doing other things too? Because I was also in soccer and all the things, like only child, my parents put me in everything and whatever, which was amazing. But were you in other things? And are you still doing other things?
No, I haven't done sports for a very long time. I have no hand-eye coordination at all. Like I'm really good with my feet, but that's it. I can't throw a ball anymore. But I did like, pee-wee soccer and, little league t-ball and stuff. And I was good because I really like wanted to work hard because I wanted everyone to win. I was always a very internally competitive kid. So I think that also actually helped me with Irish dance because I was like, oh, I want to win. I want a trophy. And there was also a point where I was like, no, I actually really just like the process too, you know?
Mm,
You get to be in the studio for a long time and you're, you know, when you're younger and you're like, I want to win, I want to, you know, get, you know, a trophy and I want to be in prelim or I want to get to open. And then eventually you're like, actually you start to fall in love with the process too.
totally.
Would you say
Um,
then that like that was your kind of realization that, oh, like dance is your thing more than maybe another knowledge to be like, oh yeah, I'm recognizing that this is my thing and I like these aspects of it, which make it better than soccer or whatever.
Yeah, no, I really fell in love with it, and I also have a big passion for the music. I've started recently learning how to play festoons on the piano, and it's like another way that Irish dance, like the art form and the culture, it just starts to fold into your life, and you realize all day, every day, I'm doing Irish dance, whether I'm doing schoolwork, I'm doing a set on my hands, or I just go, oh, maybe I could write a dance figure by myself. Like, it just starts to become who you are. And I
yeah.
think, you know, realizing that has helped me a lot with like my internal confidence and, you know, learning more about myself too.
Can you can you speak to that a little bit more? I think that's really fascinating because um well, first of all, me too. I literally just started piano as well. Which is so fun. It's like I'm Megan and I would both agree like the music it just gets into your soul and you just like that's what I want to listen to most of the time. But I sorry, just to kind of loop back what you were saying of how it kind of like it just becomes who you are and it's kind of like just I guess intertwined in every aspect of your life. And I think you said it kind of has helped your like internal confidence. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like because you start to learn how to perform
Hmm,
after a while of competing, you're like, oh, smiling is not just the total, that's not how you get the package. You have to like really dance with your heart. You know, as silly as it is, it's like you have to dance with your entire soul. And that's when the judges really feel it too. And it's helped me with my confidence because, like, you know, throwing an 8-year-old on a stage, sometimes they get scared and sometimes they run off and they're like, oh, I can't do this. But my first major competition was a nationals and I was freaking out, but I stepped on stage and I was like, nope, this is me. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to try and do it well.
totally. I just think it's really so from a sports psych kind of perspective, I love hearing your explanation and your view of that because I feel and I can understand this perspective too, but there is sort of this I guess discourse out there that's like sort of along the lines of like careful not to identify too much with whatever it is that you do because then like if something goes poorly it's like your whole sense of value and self-worth is like tied up in this thing. And then if it doesn't pan out, then, you know, your whole self-confidence is riding on that. And I can understand that conceptually. Um, and I guess to a degree, I've kind of thought about that for my own experience, but I feel, and I'm curious how you guys feel about this too, is like it's like I could try to fight this, my identity and fight, like I just really do identify as a dancer, even though like I'm retired now, it's like that's who I am. And yeah, I could see like, you know, the importance of I diversifying, but at the same time, it just like really feels like I'm fighting my nature in doing that. And so I like to hear what you're saying is like, no, like I draw my confidence from identifying with this rather than like trying to fight that, if that makes sense. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like both of you.
I think personally, like, to be a really, really good dancer, even just, or just someone who really, really loves it, you kind of have to be obsessed with it a little bit. You got to be a little bit stir crazy. And, you know, it's one part of that, like, even if you step away from it, it never really leaves you. You know, like if you stop dancing or if you finish a competitive career, I feel like even when people do retire, they're like, no, I need to come back immediately because you miss the everyday loop of the schedule and the training and the thinking about it, but it doesn't actually have to leave you. You know, you can move on if you want to, but really, if you're like, oh, it's who I am, then let it be who you are. You don't have to change that to fit into what other people consider normal.
That's such a nice message. I appreciate hearing that right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I think exactly kind of what you're saying, like if that's how you're feeling and how you're identifying in your sport, then let it be that. It doesn't need to be someone else's experience or how they're identifying as a dancer. It can be that for you if that's how it shows up. And I'm interested too how that kind of maybe developed within you as you grew from a younger dancer to where you are now and you've clearly like accomplished so much. Has that been like over the course of your dance career that's kind of developed, or do you feel like from the beginning you were pretty strongly like, yep, I'm an Irish dancer, like this is my thing?
I mean, there was definitely everyone has their bumps in the road. When I was younger, I was completely obsessed with it. We always joke around with one of the retired moms from my old dance school because the first thing I said was, I like Irish dance because I win. But, you know, when I started to get older and, you know, you start to want to do normal things, but I was like, no, I think because I tried to step away from it a little bit, but not really. And especially when you're like really injured, you're like, oh, like, how what am I gonna do? And then you get used to not dancing every day. And it's like, oh, I can live without it. But then you go back to it and you're like, no, I really can't because it makes you so happy. And there's a point at which you're like, no, I need to do this all the time. And I've already decided like I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. I'm gonna teach, I'm gonna judge, I wanna be in the circuit forever.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really cool too, as like well, I know Mac is experiencing this now, and as I get older, I am too, just that, you know, you can be a dancer your entire life and not actually be, let's say, competing or training to the same level your entire life, because at a certain point there are changes and shifts, but you can always choose to identify as that and find yourself like in that crowd and in that group of people. It doesn't necessarily leave you at any point because it's so wonderful that there are so many different ways you can approach this and be involved. It's never really like, oh, I'm done, I've quit, you know? It's always part of you. And I'm realizing now as I get older too, like I love competing and going to competitions and classes and all of that, but I feel like my most amazing version of me when I'm just practicing, you know, like on my own and developing those skills of like finding pride in my own work and confidence in my own ability and like those really deep inner skills that only come on like a one-to-one kind of level. I think having that is really valuable and then leads you to being a dancer forever, you know, you're always becoming that.
Yeah. And I'm kind of lucky that I've found recently a group of friends that also are obsessed with it and they're like, let's do this all day, every day. You know, I've been at several schools and you know, I've definitely seen my fair share of dancers who are just like, I don't want to be here, or they're just really dismissive about coming to dance, which, like, totally that's their own journey, and everyone has their own journey. So it's, you know, it's not like you can judge it, but you're also like, it's hard to relate to people when you're in a class full of dancers who, you know, don't want to work hard. So finding, you know, that internal self motivation, like you said, like the one on one time with yourself, it really helps you. I feel like it always helps dancers like grow internally and be like, no, I'm the normal one. Like, because I want to work hard here, you know, with my own time.
No, I like
Totally.
how you said too, just how you're like, oh no, I'm the normal one, because I know I've had my own experiences too. You can almost feel like an outsider in your own like environment. You're like, Irish dance is my thing, but why do I feel like I'm the only one who's doing it this way and having my own experience. And it's super awesome that you found a group of friends that interpret like and live dancing in the same way you do. That's super, super awesome. But I think a lot of kids experience throughout their dancing journey that isolated kind of feeling where no matter how many people are in your class or in your dancing school, when you don't share it with people in that like unique, truly deep way, it is kind of an isolating or lonely experience. But when you do then find those connections, whether it's like friends in your dancing school or through conversations like we're trying to have now and with New View and all of that, whether it's through that kind of thing, finding your people in this little world is pretty important. You don't really realize until all of a sudden you have it and you're like, oh, this is like so much better.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
It adds so much value. I'm just to like do a slight detour because I'm having this question that keeps coming up through this conversation sort of about how we're like identifying with this thing that we do. Just in my own self-reflection, I think I've had this kind of weird idea in my head that I don't know where this idea came from. But McKenna, like I identify with you too in the sense of like I've always been very competitive and like I've had like these competitive goals of like wanting to win things and whatever. And, that's its own conversation and whatever. But um, a weird thing for me, and I'm just curious if this is what your thoughts are on this, is like I think I developed somewhere along the way of like if my competitive results don't sort of align with what I see my identity is in this thing. So just to put that plainly, like if I don't win or if I don't get like a certain placement or whatever, like then, like I can't identify with this thing as much as I did before. It's like my identity is on the line, um, in that my results have to measure up in order for me to like internally still identify with this thing to the extent that I did before. And only just sort of in the last couple of years have I started to be able to sort of separate those two things and realize like, no, I am allowed to still be striving for these competitive results, but like my identity isn't reliant on that. Like I'm allowed to be as involved in this thing. I don't have to like earn my place by getting a certain placement. It's like that's just through how I live rather than by how I place. I don't know how like you interpret that or if you experience that at all.
Well, first of all, you are not alone in that feeling. I know a lot of friends and people throughout the years who have just been like, ugh, I didn't win, or I didn't recall, or this person got above me, or that person got above me. And, I feel so stupid. I feel like, I shouldn't do this anymore. And yeah, not reaching a goal, it really, really sucks to put it plain. But you also have to remember once you know what it takes and you are willing to do whatever it takes, that makes you a champion. Like once you're like once you're a world champion, you're always a world champion. It doesn't matter, after that, if you ever win again or if you win every single time after that. It doesn't change who you are and it doesn't change how people perceive you. But yeah, it can sometimes be a little isolating to be like, because I just got, fourth at the Worlds after winning twice. And it's like, I was really, really bummed after. But then I remembered I'd trained for 20 days because I was injured and I was on crutches. And then I had to get toe surgery. Like, things happen. And you can't always blame yourself because sometimes, you also have to like get knocked down a couple times to be like to want it again and to still be hungry for the titles and to win things.
Mhm. And
Totally.
who's to say then too, like the effort you put in this year, even though you didn't win or get that top result, the effort and work you put in despite all the hardship you faced, like that's world champion worthy right there, you know? So it comes
Exactly. Like
down to
that's the
like
way to
how Mac and I talk a lot about like framing. It comes up a lot in all the New View conversations, just how you learn to frame things. Like, yes, it is okay to say, oh, I could have done more work or whatever, or oh, I am upset I didn't win. But like you just expressed that you put as much work as you possibly could into this year, despite all the challenges. that's huge. Like framing that as a win is honestly like just hearing that, that's as impressive as winning the world championships, you know? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
really, really respectable. So it's interesting how you can kind of draw wins from all sorts of experiences in this, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
even, in doing well but not getting exactly what you wanted, it sometimes stings a little more than if you had just been like, oh, I didn't go at all. Because sometimes I'm like,
Mm.
oh, someone should have stopped me. But at the same time, I don't regret it. I still brought home, a medal to the US and I brought home a globe to the US. And, you know, having to heal from that and be like, no, it's okay. Like, it doesn't change me. It doesn't change my perception on myself. I mean, everyone, always gets what I call post-major depression, which I
Yeah.
think
Mm.
it really is real because it's like
Yeah.
after that high of, training as much as you could, even if I didn't feel prepared, I did everything that I possibly could in the time that I had. And you come back from it and you're like, now what do I do with myself?
Yeah, and you're
Mhm.
with your people in your like environment that makes you feel your most you, and you're listening to the music and like seeing your friends and having like those real extremely deep moments like with yourself one on one, like side stage and on stage and all of that. And then you're done and you're like, okay, what now? Like normal life? Ooh, you know, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
that for us is normal life.
Mhm.
Regular everyday like human life is not quite our thing.
Yeah, and that's what you look forward to for months on end too.
Mhm.
Like we all talk about, oh, we're going to the nationals in a couple weeks, but we've been talking about it since April.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I mean, I think that is a cool thing about, and I'm sure this is true in other sports and disciplines as well, but Megan, you often bring this up, I feel like, but it's like recognizing how lucky we are to like live life on these, and maybe this is for some people more than others, but like I'd rather live my life feeling the real highs and more of the real lows because they come together rather than just kind of on this flat line all the time. And there's something nice about the flat line every now and again that's just predictable and whatever. But I think there's something about like putting yourself in those situations like McKenna, I kind of really respect you for like bringing that up in that, you're like, oh, I kind of wish somebody would have just stopped me. But looking back, you go like, no, like that was part of my journey. And you probably have some greater insights about yourself and just having gone through that experience. Like you said earlier in this conversation, how, your first nationals, you were terrified and like, how do I even get up there and do this? And you're like, nope, but I'm going to do it. And like from there, McKenna becomes more, because you're like, no, I showed myself I could get up on stage and do that as an 8-year-old. And then, this year you just showed yourself, hey, I like could get up on stage and dance at the Worlds without like an ideal run up. It's like that contributes to who you're becoming and like the confidence that you have. Which I just think is really cool that like dance gives us the opportunity to do that. If that makes sense.
And that
No,
has
yeah,
me
totally.
thinking too, like, imagine where you'll be next year, you know?
Yeah.
Let's say it's like a great healthy year. You'll be like, oh, this is like a piece of cake. I can do this. You know, it just is so interesting and cool to have those experiences where you like learn about yourself so deeply.
Yeah. Well, and I keep trying to tell my friends, like, they're like, oh, I'm scared to do it. And I'm like, do it scared. If you're scared, do
Mm,
it scared because that's when you kind of find a little bit more strength than you thought you had. Or like if you're in a really hard stamina run and you have nothing left, but your teacher says something that makes you mad, and then suddenly you have more energy again. It's like you kind
Hmm.
of have to fuel your own fire a little bit. And that is something that also it roots from self-motivation, which I understand like not every dancer has, but you can always find it. And Irish dance is something that luckily brings it out of you.
Yeah, definitely requires quite a lot of that, and each experience almost builds that within you. Well, I would say each experience either helps you find that within yourself or it can kind of derail that progress depending on how you're framing your work and how you're pushing yourself. But like Mac was saying, you can interpret it differently and grow from there. And it's so interesting to me hearing you say all these things and like getting to know you more through this conversation as you explain your journey. And it's just really, really respectable. I think it's really, really cool. So
Thank
Yeah.
you're pretty awesome.
Hey, two
you.
things I want to repeat from the last response you just had, McKenna, because they were so good. If you're scared to do it scared. I want to put that somewhere on my phone because I need to hear that more often.
Yeah.
If you're scared to do it scared, because honestly, like I'm gonna add on another cliche to that. It's like, okay, if you're scared to do it scared, because like you're either gonna win or you're gonna learn something.
And you got to
Like
do it
those,
anyway.
Oh, I like
You're
that.
there
Yeah.
at
yeah,
lined up at the
yeah,
finish. Like you got to get through
yeah.
it.
Yeah, the only way you're like losing is probably by not doing it, I'm guessing. And then the other one that I really liked was oh, I forget quite exactly how you put it, but it was like you got to fuel your own fire kind of thing. And yeah, Irish dancing or a person or whatever might give you that initial spark, but you have to tend to your own flame. I think like, you start a fire when you're out camping or whatever, and it's like, okay, it started, but it doesn't just it's not just like, oh, it started and it burns forever. Like you have to tend to it. And I think that's really true about our journeys in dancing and like I think being committed to that and no like committed to that first spark. It's like, no, I know that spark was there and sometimes it's like really hard to feel it or you might just be like really struggling with whatever, but I guess being committed to fueling your own fire, I love that sentiment. I think that's a really useful one for people to remember. I need to remember that.
Yeah. I think it's also like um dancers who are like, "Oh, I need a break." That's still fueling, that's still tending to your fire. You're still taking care of
Totally.
yourself. And, sometimes everyone experiences burnout from time to time. It's like, take a break, take an exhale, like take a step back and reevaluate yourself and then come back and then keep fueling the fire because sometimes, you dance, we have a really, really hard season from, you know, what we do, our qualifiers all the way through the worlds. There's really no break. And,
Mhm.
I personally dance through Christmas because the holidays normally, yeah, you slow down, you spend time with family, but then you're also like, well, you get really bored. So you start practicing. And after a while, like of even being motivated, you're like, ugh, I gotta go dance. Like, even though you get to go to dance, which is exciting, but you
Mm.
experience the burnout a little bit there. So taking a step back after Worlds, and I feel like I'm always like, every year I try as hard as I can, even if I can't, to just take a break and to take care of yourself because that is still, keeping your passion alive.
Totally. I'm curious about that. Do you have sort of like a plan in mind at the beginning of the year in terms of like where you're going to take your rest or like that kind of thing? Or do you do it more by feel?
Um, Lately I've done it by when I get injured.
Fair.
I don't know what's the last couple of years I've gotten injured a lot. Last summer I was gonna go to the All Scotlands and then I had to get abdominal surgery. So it
Mm.
was one of those, oh, I have to take a break, which,
Mhm.
is always upsetting in itself, but um I kind of just planned it on trying now I'm trying to be, proactive more in taking care of my injuries. And it's like, okay, now I'm gonna take a break. Like this year, I'm going to take a break a little bit after the nationals and then train all through the All Scotlands. And then, the beginning of November, also going to like scale back a little bit, then go to the qualifier. And then after Worlds again. I feel like Worlds is like the beginning and the end of every season too, because it's
Yeah.
like that's where you start, that's your starting point, but it's also how, the entire season has led up to that moment. So it's just
Mhm.
like I try to hit the refresh button after Worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
think that
really like interesting too, as I mean, you're a little bit younger than both Mac and I would say I do a terrible job of like planning out rest periods and like even considering that like on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. That's just like not crossing my mind. So I like hearing that you're planning that out because you're obviously very smart and you know what you're doing at a younger age. And that is very, very good to hear. So that's respectable in and of itself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, okay. And then another follow-up to that. And this is what I'm getting even more interested in is like, okay, yeah, as dancers, we get like it's a season and it's a grueling season. And there are more like natural times, I think, of the year when it makes sense to plan in those breaks. But what about like the micro, I guess we'll call it rests or like things that you can do just throughout your more like grueling training periods to keep it fresh? Like, I'm just curious, do you have things that you do that are like outside of dance that help you kind of rejuvenate or like stay fresh and excited to go to dance? Or I don't know. I'm just curious if you have that in your life built in at all.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, do piano. So even if it's in the middle of the night after class, I'll come home and I'll be like, I heard this tune at class and it's stuck in my head. So I'll go to Fesh app and I'll try and, learn it by myself. And even if I wake everybody up in the middle of the night, but trying to stay motivated through other things too. Like I keep a journal that I write in all the time every day to try and not everything can you express through dancing. So I try to have other ways that I can be creative.
Mhm.
I listen to a lot of music, Irish music, usually, but I try to expand my horizons a little bit here and there and be like, okay, how can I, listen to something and, relate to it that I never thought I would be able to relate to.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so cool. I love the idea of that. I feel like I've been pretty lucky in that my teachers are multi-talented individuals, and so I by nature have always been very more like single-minded of like no, like I need to just do my dancing and like only practice dancing, and that's important to like have that focus, I think. But I think sometimes where dancers actually do fall down is failing to see like where they can benefit from other sources of like creativity or like learning from other sports or whatever it might be. I think like sometimes there's lost opportunities there, and I think that those can both double as like rest and relaxation, rejuvenation, and also as like inputs for becoming an even better dancer too. Like it can be kind of both of those things, which is really interesting to me. I'm always just curious like what other people do, and I think that's so cool that you play piano. That's like I'm aspiring to do that right now, but I'm further behind you on that journey for sure.
We'll have to exchange videos sometime and learn different tunes off each other.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I mean, I'm not going to be sending you any useful videos other than like for comedy at this point, but it's something to work towards. No, that's awesome. Um, Okay, sorry. I just keep ha having ideas for questions for you, but I feel like you seem like on the in the vein of creativity, you seem like a super creative actually person, and I'm curious like what is your having said that you want to see yourself in this world of Irish dancing like for the rest of your life. How do you see the world of Irish dancing like evolving as we, keep putting one foot in front of the other?
I really want to see more I don't know, I want to see more evolving of choreography and what we're allowed to do on stage. I think if you can do an insane trick and it's not in the Irish dance book, let's try and put it in there. I learned to write choreography, as one does of being at different schools, having different styles. And I think, at some point everyone tries to experiment a little bit with steps. And I really want to see that world evolve too. But I really want to be a teacher and I want to you know, teach kids Irish dance and maybe explain things that, I would have benefited from being explained to me a little differently or in a different world almost.
Hmm.
Because, having, like you said, you have multi-talented teachers. Um, you also that brings another level of creativity and, musicality into maybe the steps or the training. And I think that I want other dancers to benefit from that.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. I mean, and just hearing you say that, I'm extremely confident we're in good hands with younger dancers like you know, growing up and becoming like what we all are now. Mac talks about this a lot, but we're all growing based on those who have come before us. And it's lovely to know that like you, McKenna, and other dancers who are so talented and passionate get to like keep carrying this on. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where the sport goes because even though it evolves and changes, like it never forgets where it rooted from.
Mm.
There are always people who want to keep the traditional aspect, and I think it's also like really important that we still have that while also bringing
Yeah.
in the fresh ideas.
Yeah, there's a place for it all, it seems.
Totally. And also like making the old things new again too. I think that's a really cool thing is like innovation and building on the tradition. I think that that's a really fun idea to just kind of roll with, you know. And I agree with Megan. I think the world of Irish dancing is in good hands with people like you, McKenna. And yeah, it's an exciting time. It's been so awesome having you on the podcast. I feel like I could chat with you for ages, so maybe we'll have to do a follow-up.
Of
But yeah,
course.
no, it's been great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking with, fellow dancers and, I've always personally looked up to you guys for a long time and it's just like to finally get to talk to you and the fact that we can relate to different things about the sport, it's, really shows the power that Irish dance has and its ability to bring people together.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of the New View podcast. We hope you enjoyed.
If you have any ideas about future guests we should interview or want to connect, you can find us on Instagram at newview.collective or email us at newviewcollective.mm@gmail.com.